Now, I have this quote from Benedict XVI, directly making reference to Vatican I. Okay? On the part of the West, the maximum demand would be that the East recognize the primacy of the Bishop of Rome in the full scope of the definition of 1870. As regards Protestantism, the maximum demand of the Catholic Church would be that the Protestant ecclesiological ministers be regarded as totally invalid and that the Protestants be converted to Catholicism. He says those would be the maximum demands. He says none of the maximum solutions offers any real hope of unity. So he explicitly makes reference to the full scope, quote, of the definition of 1870 and says them accepting that is not the way for unity. So he's defending a man as the Pope who says you don't even have to accept the Pope or the definitions of Vatican I. It's just insanity.
And Vatican I also says if you don't accept these, the primacy of the Pope, you cannot be considered as part of the Catholic Church.
That's right. And furthermore, he admitted that there are gaps between the papacy, between the succession of one pope to the other. Okay, the Church has never said that the gap can only last a certain period of time. That's why his argument proves nothing.
And there's a principle established in theology that if you have a time without a pope, a day, a week, a year, 3.5 years we've had without a pope, you could be without a pope for 50 or 60 years. There's absolutely nothing that Mr. Goli can cite that by any authority of the Church that says that a crisis that we're dealing with today cannot happen. What we're saying is the reality of the situation. He has nothing to prove.
And just so people understand quickly what Vatican I is saying by perpetual successors in the primacy, that the Eastern Schismatics hold, many of them, that the Bishop of Rome is the successor of St. Peter. That's what they hold. But they deny that the Bishop of Rome has the supreme primacy of jurisdiction that St. Peter had. So they hold that the primacy of supreme jurisdiction stopped with St. Peter. It did not continue down to the following bishops of Rome throughout the ages. Okay, and so Vatican I is condemning that by saying that Peter and his successors are perpetually the successors in the same primacy, which means that whenever you have a true pope, he holds the exact same primacy in the church that the first pope held. Okay, the primacy is perpetual whenever you have a true pope. And of course, it does not mean you always have to have a true pope. That's why Father Edmund James O'Reilly, writing after Vatican I, a well-known Irish theologian, said that the papacy could be without a pope for almost 4 decades. And he says we cannot dismiss as impossible that which we would regard as distressing.
He had even said that what happened during the Great Western Schism, that a lot of people would say that this is impossible. In fact, there are people at the Great Western Schism living during that time when there are 2 popes and then a 3rd pope that absolutely thought there was no way that this situation could be resolved. And so, he mentions about how you're going to get the cardinals. Well, the cardinals have not always elected the pope. For the first millennium, you had the clergy electing the pope. So cardinals have not always elected a pope. He mentions that anyone who doesn't agree with us is not a Catholic. We've never said that. And he also brings up Sister Lucia as one of his main arguments. When we show the photographic evidence on our website, and it's on others, they've done even more detailed analysis, of the evidence that these were 2 different people. So that doesn't prove his point either.
And also, if you accept that she was the real Sister Lucia, you have to accept that the Vatican's version of the Third Secret is authentic, since she confirmed that. You have to accept that it refers to the assassination attempt of John Paul II, because she confirmed that. That is utterly ridiculous.
And we know for a fact that the real Sister Lucia said that the Third Secret of Fatima would make more sense in 1960. This other one, which was interviewed, and I know someone who was involved with the interview in 1992, in which she was asked about, didn't Our Lady say it was to be revealed in 1960 because it will make more sense then? And she responded, Our Lady never said that. She also said that Our Lady never intended the Third Secret to be revealed. It was only intended for the Pope.
And that's why Mr. Goli contradicts himself when he says that he first said that it's crazy, and then he admitted it was possible that there's a false Sister Lucia. So if it's possible, then there's no argument there. He criticized the quote that John Paul II says that Christ is united with each man. Well, that's actually not the primary quote we bring forward to prove that he preached universal salvation. It's actually slightly different, where he explains that. In Redemptor Homage number 13, he says, Christ has united himself with each man forever. Okay, so that the union never ceases. He says the same thing in Redemptoris Missio number 4. And with each one, Christ has united himself forever through this mystery. Says the same thing in Centesimus Annus number 53. Christ has united himself with each one forever. And we have other explicit quotes where General Audience, December 27th, 1978, John Paul II, The whole of humanity is redeemed, saved, ennobled to the extent of participating in divine life by means of grace. The phrase divine life is the scriptural term for justification, the state of grace.
And therefore that means that all men are saved, because hell by definition is separation from God. So if all men are united to Christ forever, that means that all men are saved. And he goes on and says that all men are united to Christ from the moment of their conception. And so he's actually preaching that all men are the Immaculate Conception.
That's right.
So that, so we have numerous examples of this.
And we'll talk a little bit more about the objections. And all you need to do to see that this is what's going on is to look at the actions. See, heresy is not only manifested by word, but also by deed. Okay, St. Thomas Aquinas said that if anyone were to worship at the tomb of Muhammad, he would be deemed an apostate by that action. Okay, that's why Pope Pius IX, in his dogmatic definition of the Immaculate Conception, explained that heresy against that dogma could be signified by word, by writing, or by other external means. Okay, so when John Paul II prays with the Anglicans, when he prays with the Lutherans, when he goes into their churches, when he says he's in communion with them, this is all manifestation of heresy by deed. Okay, and so when you see him praying with the witch doctors, when you see him expressing his anxiousness to meet the Supreme Buddhist Patriarch in the temple and calling the Supreme Buddhist Patriarch His Holiness, okay, you're witnessing apostasy by deed. So you can see that by the pictures.
And Benedict XVI actually doesn't even believe that Protestantism, he says Protestantism is not heresy. And I'd like Mr. Goley, if he wants to challenge us on that, we'll show right from Ratzinger's writings where he says that Protestantism is not heresy.
And that, of course, flows directly from the heretical teachings of Vatican II, where it says that those in these non-Catholic religious communities cannot be accused of the sin of separation, which is heresy or schism. And it says that generally, without making any qualification. So Protestants are not heretics, according to the Vatican II religion.
And also, he may bring up, well, you're saying the gates of hell have prevailed against the church. Actually, the popes have defined what the gates of hell, mentioned in Matthew 16, are. And they've defined the gates of hell as being heretics. So when Mr. Goley asserts, this is the leadership of the Catholic Church, okay, he's asserting that the gates of hell have prevailed against the church. Not what we're saying, what he's saying. Because he's asserting that these heretics, these apostates, are the legitimate authority in the Catholic Church.
He made reference to Dominus Jesus. Well, Dominus Jesus reaffirms the heresy of Vatican II, which teaches that Protestant religions are a means of salvation. It says that schismatic sects are true particular churches, which means true dioceses in the one true church. Benedict XVI, in a series of addresses, they're quoted on a quote on our website, you can see it, he said that after Dominus Jesus, the Church of Christ is present and operative in these sects. Okay, so Dominus Jesus teaches heresy. It also expresses the idea that these other religions might have some positive might be positively willed by God in the means of salvation. In other words, God might will false religions.
And also, see, what people need to realize is that those who are divided in faith or in government cannot be living in the unity of the same church. That's what Pope Pius XII teaches in Mystici Corporis Christi. So someone who would say, well, my faith isn't the same as Benedict XVI, because I disagree with this, that, and the other thing. Well, you're not in the same church.
And God commands us, okay, in Titus, to avoid a heretic. Okay, he would not command us to avoid a heretic, as St. Robert Bellarmine pointed out, if we could not know that someone is a heretic. And that's why he says, for men are not bound or able to read hearts. But when they see that someone is a heretic by his external works, they judge him to be heretic, pure and simple, and condemn him as a heretic. And he mentioned how few people believe this. Well, during the Arian crisis, 97% of the bishops became Arian. And if that's just a prelude to the great apostasy, what will it be like in the great apostasy?
And also, we mention, our Lord says in Luke 18:8, will there be any faith when he returns? He mentions there will be as in the days of Noah, 8 people out of the entire world spared. Okay, so you have this thing, false signs and wonders to deceive the elect if that were possible. If he didn't shorten those days, no human flesh would be saved. So you have a clear picture of a total apostasy. It's been predicted.